day, we've resumed our live transmission in the Situation Room. And we thank you very much, everybody who's tuned in on Spice FM, on KTN Home, on YouTube, and on Facebook. Karibu sana. We'll be Happy New Year until December 20th. Okay? That's how it's going to be.
Yes, it is.
All right. Is it a Happy New Year for you as you're sending your kids back to school? How are you doing in terms of school fees? Well, Kiwi would like to come and help.
The stories are already trickling in about folks who are having a problem here or there. Look, it's handled, as we would say. And Kiwi says, get to a supermarket. Do it today. Buy a tin of the Kiwi shoe polish. You're going to get airtime or data. Once you dial the code *459*5#, there's a code under the lid when you pop it, and then you'll be able to get into the draw. Look, folks, 35,000 shillings up for grabs. 4 people winning this every week. It's a pretty sum when it comes to school fees. You want to take advantage of that? Walk into your supermarket, your duka, your shop, wherever it is, buy a tin, follow the instructions, put in the code, get your data airtime, and then get into the draw. Could be you. 35,000 shillings this week, next week, other weeks. Let's go now.
Like that. Yeah. Talking about going and moving, let's talk about taxi. City. This taxi app, it's called Maramoja Taxi, right?
Yes, it
you
is.
download it. You guys find it on your App Store, Play Store.
Blue.
It's a blue one. Download that, and then you register. And you said registration is very, very simple.
It's actually very simple.
Yeah.
Very, very. They even tell you. I mean, it's a step by step that is easy to follow. Then you get to the interesting part when you actually want to now use it.
Yes.
Okay? So you log on.
You log on to the app.
Yes. Then this picture appears. So you've already told them where
So
you
you
want
said,
to go.
I'm seeking a taxi to take me
Yeah,
from
me to
my
take
current
you
location
to my official residence, something
Yes.
of that sort.
Mhm.
Okay. Then you get several pictures. Taxi driver with the name. They even tell you the age of the person, number plate of the taxi, and how far away they are. So you have a choice. You can scroll through and choose. I'm leaving in half an hour. Let's take this one here. Okay. The person calls you, sends you a message, so you know.
Yeah.
Yes. When do you want to be picked up? Said this and this. Let me just confirm. Are you at this place? He said, I'm at that place. I will be there in this. And they come. Now, when they come, there's a process. They will wait. What I found interesting, when you're about to leave, you have to sign with the code that your phone has. Otherwise, they cannot leave. They say, could you key in the code? Then I can leave. Now, you will get wherever you're going. Again, before you make your payment, there is a code that you have to send in. Before then, the payment cannot be received. So I'm saying, part of my journeys was to have a conversation. I always have a conversation with the taxi gentlemen and women who ferry me from point A to B. They said, of all the apps that they use, and they all have all these apps, this one pays them the best. So now I have to take their word.
It pays the best to the drivers, and it's also the cheapest to the rider.
Yes.
That's you. Okay? So it's a Kenyan app, developed by Kenyan and run by Kenyans. And they say, you know what, Maramoja, it's Kenya, let's go. Maramoja ni yetu. Several things that you need to know about Maramoja. Number one, if you actually load cash onto the Maramoja wallet, and this is, put whatever amount of money you want to put into the wallet that you'll be using for your next payment, you get a 50% bonus immediately. Okay? And then if you, because you're listening to us and you're tuned into Spice, if you use the promo code SPICE30, you'll get a 30% discount on your next trip. Now imagine you've loaded 100, you've gotten 150, and then you have a 30% discount on your trip. So basically they've given you 80%.
You pay 100.
Like that.
Yes.
Just use the promo code SPICE30, you get a 30% discount on your next trip. Let's begin the year and looking at what we need to be thinking about in terms of our governance. Our next guests, Okiya Omtatah, the Senator for Busia County. Happy New Year, Senator.
Happy New Year to you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Karibu sana.
I'm so happy to see you.
How was the festive season for you?
I was lying low. Yeah.
Chini ya maji.
Me and my God.
In Busia or in Nairobi?
Nairobi.
Okay.
I did not travel up country.
Karibu sana, it's good to have you here.
Asante.
City will welcome you with the day's proverb. Listen to the proverb, it's in Kiswahili. We want you to translate it to English, and then you give us your interpretation of that proverb.
Our proverbs of the whole of this week come from the country of Kenya.
The Republic.
the republic, the independent republic country of Kenya. Okay, the multi-party country of Kenya. Si lazima kuzima taa ya mwenzako ili yako ionekane.
Si lazima kuzima taa ya mwenzako ili yako ionekane.
Yes.
That's ndiposa.
Yes.
Senator, how would you translate this into English?
Well, I looks to be dealing with small rooms. When you talk about matai, you're talking about small room. But for me, who engages in the cosmos, it is said that the stars are never bright when the moon is full.
The stars are never bright when the moon is full. But they don't dim either way.
No.
They don't go off. What's your interpretation of it?
Well, I think it basically says that there's enough room for everybody. Yeah, so you don't need to pull somebody down to be seen to do anything. Just do your thing.
Do your thing.
Yeah. There's enough for everybody to do.
Okay.
In the creation, sharing in the creation of God. We are co-creators, so, and there's enough room for everybody.
Right.
So you don't need to cut somebody's feet down for you to succeed or to mudsling or to do whatever. So it basically is a proverb that calls for harmony. It's room for everybody. Like in an orchestra, all those voices, all those instruments have a place. And if you had just one instrument, you can't have an orchestra. So you need all those things. So I think that's what it is basically telling us. Yeah.
Interdependence.
Yeah.
and working relations.
Synergies. Yeah. Teamwork.
It goes very well into our conversation then. In fact, in where you sit as Okiya Omtatah, as a senator, and also as a defender of the public interest. Do you feel that sometimes the three arms of government are trying to dim one another so they can remain the only ones that are shining?
I think what I've tended to see is that it's the executive that tries to get all the oxygen in the room and leave the others starving. So I think that's why the problem for me is that the executive, because it controls the purse and it controls the means of violence, tends to want to behave like the only organ available in the state. Like when you talk of the government, it is the government. And that's why even you realize that in more common literature, you'll find the people referring to the executive as the government.
Yeah.
Yeah. They never refer to the judiciary as the government or parliament as the government, but the executive is referred to as the government. Yet the executive is just a branch of the government. Yeah.
Recently, we've had these conversations. In fact, the president said, lazima tuwe na mjadala on this one, on how we relate, particularly with the judiciary. We as the executive have a mandate, direct mandate from the people. We went, campaigned and said we'd like to implement these programs. And the people said, yes, yes, yes. You are a person after our own hearts. And therefore, go ye and implement those programs. And then people like Omtatah and Eric and others are going to court and halting them. And
well, first of all, kuna mjadala.
Yeah?
You know, this guy is trying to be smart. You have the constitution, mjadala gani tena? The separation of powers, hakuna mjadala. That should come out very clear to the president. Hakuna mjadala.
What do you mean?
Mjadala wa nini? Everything is set down in the constitution. The executive has its role. The judiciary has its role. Parliament has its role. Unless he wants us to subvert the constitution, to enda nyuma ya tent, to attend the constitution, and that's an invitation I'm not ready to take. Just implement the constitution.
Is it possible that he's just basically just expressing frustration that yes, in everybody playing their role, then there are those who are misusing another office?
No, I don't think.
And misusing the process of the court, which ends up undermining the job that I have to do.
The president, the court is just an adjudicator. So you cannot say you are misusing the court unless you are going to say that the adjudicator is also complicit which would require evidence that the adjudicator is not impartial and independent. You need to demonstrate that that's the case. Otherwise, it doesn't mean that because you have got your agenda, somebody should not question it. Number two, the elections were not a referendum on the constitution. The elections chose a very small part of the state called government. Government is not the state. So, and the president needs to distinguish when he's a head of state and when he's a head of government. Because in Kenya, both are fused together. So government is a very, very small part of the Kenyan state. So the elections were not about the Kenyan state, were about who will run the Kenyan state. Not to undermine it, not to destroy it, or to whatever, but just to manage it well. They had an agenda, and the agenda has to be carried out within the provisions of the construction, the four walls of the constitution. You go out of that, you're not implementing the agenda, because the ultimate public interest is in the rule of law, is the law. Anything outside the law cannot serve the public.
Senator, you talk about, basically implementing the Constitution.
Yes.
If we look at Chapter 7 of the Constitution, representation of the people, that's one of the things that you've, I think held quite closely to your heart in the different ways in which we've seen you come through. Look at Chapter 7 specifically. How do we say that this plays out in the Kenya that we live in from today, whereby the representation of the people has been subverted, as you say? How should it be according to what the words of Chapter 7 actually say?
Well, Chapter 7 is about the representation of the people, how people get elected to occupy political office in this country, especially at the national level and at the county level. One of the biggest tragedies that happened in this country is that we have this constitution, which in some aspects is purely technical, in some aspects is what you would expect in a constitution. Because of our unique history, certain things that should not be in a constitution were put there. You get something like, just to step aside a bit, you'll get something like in a public procurement. Where would public procurement be in a constitution? Because our history is one of massive abuse.
Yep.
And I think the last time I counted, I had seen that in the constitution of Morocco, South Africa, Kenya, and the Philippines. And if you look at the history of those countries, have got issues. So there are purely technical matters that were put in our constitution that require that after the promulgation of the constitution, our judges should have been taken through the technical aspects of the constitution. And up to now, there is need for a proper training of our judges on Chapter 7. What it entails, what it anticipates. Because when you look at the judgments that have come out, especially in presidential petitions, you find a very frustrating lack of understanding by the judges of the technical issues in Chapter 7. And the same for Chapter 12 on public finance. We are just litigating, we just saw a judgment from the High Court. And if you read it, you really sob at the level of ignorance displayed by the judges in their judgment in terms of not understanding what the issues are. But these are technical chapters that required some form of proper training of the judges on. Not just to assume that because somebody has been in law school, he has practiced law, he therefore can sit in judgment over these two very technical chapters in the Constitution. And I hope that those who are responsible for the judiciary will take the time to have the people train the judges. You saw the other day, these talks at Bomas, the Supreme Court made their presentation on Article 140. And they were saying that the time given to them, the 14 days for them to determine a petition, are too short or are inadequate. Now you'll find that the architecture in which they are thinking is they're thinking of paper elections, manual elections. But when you look at the architecture in chapter 7, you cannot just try a paper election because the threshold is tamper-proof. It's no longer free and fair. Like if you go to Article 81 of the Constitution, you look at 81D, principles of the of the election there. It gives you the broad principles which the election has to have. It talks of universal suffrage, fair representation, equality of the vote, and stuff like that. Equality of the vote, and every vote must count. Okay? When you've got 19 million votes, how do you guarantee that every vote has counted manually? Even in the counting process, somebody can miscount. When you're doing it manually. So every vote may not count there. When you come down, you'll find that if you go to section E, it gives you that the voting has to be by secret ballot. That we do. Free from violence, intimidation, improper influence, and whatever. I don't know whether we do that. Conducted by an independent body. IBC is an independent body. Transparent. It's never transparent. You can never know what is going on. Administered in an impartial, neutral, efficient, accurate, accountable manner. Now, why would you use the word impartial and neutral in the same sentence? A human being can be impartial, but a human being can never be neutral. It's only something that is impersonal that can be neutral. Because when these IBC officials vote, they've got their preferences. So they can only vote and say, okay, shall be impartial, shall not interfere with anything, but let us vote. But to be neutral, for the electoral system to be neutral, it is telling you something. It's beginning to care towards digitalization of the elections. So that when the process is now running out, it's impartial. It's not neutral. It's neutral. Then you go to the voting system. You are told that whatever voting method, the system has to be simple. Simple for who? Simple for who? For the voter.
Yeah.
Yes. Number 2, it has to be accurate. It has to be verifiable. By who? Who verifies it? It has to be secure. It has to be accountable. And it has to be transparent. Now, when you are running a vote, like last election, we had 19 million registered voters. Even me, where I voted, I cannot verify my vote. Once you drop that vote there in the ballot, quisha, you cannot verify what you voted for. But the technologies exist. Look at countries like Brazil and India. They've got what you call voter verified paper audit trail. You vote digitally. It gives you a serial number. You can go on the website of the electoral body and verify that your vote was really assigned to the candidate you voted for.
Essentially track your vote.
You can track your vote.
Yeah.
Verifiable. So you come and find that when you talk of accurate, the level of accuracy in this election is very high. It's no longer free and fair. We talk of tamper-proof. Accurate. What's the level of accuracy that is required? In Kenya, you win an election by one ballot. Be it an MCA,
To the
100
president.
votes, one person gets 99 votes, the other one gets 100 votes. The person who got 100 votes wins.
Yeah.
So the level of accuracy is 1 vote. And the higher you go, the more the demand on accuracy, because even the presidential election is determined by 51%
Plus 1 vote.
and 1 vote.
Yeah.
So in 19 million votes, the IEBC is supposed to ensure that they've got the results they give us are accurate to 1 vote. That cannot be done manually. It's impossible. So it must be a digital election. That's what we are looking for. Now, when you have this digital election architecture and you understand it, you'll also find that in our constitutional structure, you don't have spoiled ballots. Why don't you have spoiled ballots? Because when it's a simple election, if I am, let us say, people earn low income like security guards I'm a security guard working in Mombasa. I want to go and vote for my brother who's an MCA in Matayos or in Mandera. Today, you must save, you must travel to go and cast your vote. But if it's a simple election for the voter, you would simply go to the voting booth, and that Kim's kit, you click on it, you select the electoral, the vote, the ward where you want to vote, the candidates pop up on the screen, you select your candidate, and it's taken. And as it goes down, it's also removed from the national database. So that, you know what you have now? We have got the database, but it's like having M-Pesa, putting your money in M-Pesa, and then being told you are in Mombasa, okay, travel to Busia to go and withdraw it. Arrant nonsense. So, we need to make this thing simple, fair. But now when you come back to accuracy, the one ballot that is important, that one ballot must be accounted for, must be transparently demonstrated. And that can only be realized through a digital election. And so when the judges are given 14 days, the architecture is digital. So when I'm given 7 days to make up my case as a petitioner,
right,
and the judges 14 days,
right,
the architecture is digital, so everything is here.
So the problem then is not even with the judiciary.
No, it is in one way. Let me tell you why it is. Because in Raila 1, the Supreme Court made a declaration that is totally difficult to comprehend.
Which one is Raila 1? 2013?
Yes. There was a provision there that technology is unreliable. Technology fails. Technology is not unreliable. Technology never fails, except when it encounters one of the three or a combination: incompetence, negligence, or sabotage. That's when the technology fails. If I go to my car and I crank and it doesn't start, doesn't mean technology has failed. It could mean I've not serviced my battery. It could mean I don't know how to start a car. Or it could mean somebody has snipped the wires. You see? So that is a declaration by the Supreme Court that technology does not work. Needs to be retracted. So as to justify the elections. Number two, the Supreme Court also entertained something called spoiled ballots. I don't know if you remember the fight over spoiled ballots.
Yep.
Says they don't work. Why did the Supreme Court get that? In the Constitution, there's no spoiled ballot because the electoral structure is digital. So they begin creating problems, and that's why I said there was need to take our judges through the technical aspects of Article 80 of Chapter 7. You need to do that.
And who take them through this?
There are people who have so many experts in this country. The people who designed that chapter, there are so many experts in this country.
Say they do it, but you still go ahead and have a manual election, and you come before them.
Now, once they have done that, and they declare in manual election and null and void, nobody will hold a manual election in this country. To eliminate the cost of printing papers, eliminate the need for having all these so-called agents, eliminate all these things, and all people would require to do.
But why doesn't the Constitution just say digital election or electronic election?
No, it cannot say digital election.
Why not?
It says, no, because technology changes.
Yeah, why?
It says whatever system will be used. Tomorrow, we might have chips in our minds. So you can vote by just thinking.
So why does the Constitution not expressly say have a technological
Yes, because
election?
it doesn't say that, because it says whatever system is used.
Including manual?
No. It says whatever
But
system
does it exclude manual?
No, it doesn't exclude. It says whatever system it is used should achieve the following thresholds. Now, those thresholds
cannot be achieved
manually.
But
in the future, beyond technology today, digital, we might invent something better than digital, and so we use it. The Constitution sets the floor. It doesn't set the ceiling. And the paper manual does not make it to the floor.
Let's take a break. 28 minutes to 9. Okiya Omtatah is a senator for Busia County. He's here. Today, we are talking about Chapter 7 of the Constitution. And he's asking, what system of government then do we want that really, truly serves and addresses this Constitution? Back shortly. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Wakati nilipropose na akasema yes, we can now start moving. Baada ya kusema yes, hata kusema ati kesho ama wiki nyingine tunaanza kupanga tutafanya hivi. Nilitoa karatasi tukaanza kusema nguo itakuwa gani. The same time that time. Because mimi nilikuwa nimeapa na nikasema 2016 haitaisha kama sijafanya wedding.
Mi sifanyangi makeup, so hajanizoea na makeup and all that. Nitasema vile ulisema. So jioni tulikutana naye nimepakwa hivi. Aliniangalia hivi akaniambia since hajanizoea na makeup, akaniangalia akaniambia aki unakaa ghost. Sasa ni nini hizi umepakwa? Is the last person ningefikiria atanioa in my life.
Oh.
Siko namfuata tu nilikuwa namtaka.
By the way, alikuwa anaitwa teacher.
Sound, and I had to like do from do re mi fa till the very end. I dominate. I still will dominate, and I plan to keep dominating.
As an artist, you should have a plan, like a long-term plan that you follow.
Otherwise kwa game on top inani jazz, niko place, niko cool, nikishinda relax.
She came, we did the video, and the video came out, and Napokea Kwako was birthed or was brought to life. Hello baby, I just wanna tell you how I feel. Lord Ray, sijafika mwisho, natamani zaidi.
Yes, God. I'm single again. Nyanjo tu wangu Arsenal. Season yetu siwai. I be like Terminator. I deliver. Kama umemchoka tuachie sisi. Asemaje? Tumle paka mifupa sisi ndo mafisi.
Tatua.
Alini block. Saying scan and stop. Anasema Brandy.
On chapter 1, on any chapter 7, so that we can make it impossible for anybody to hold a paper election in this country, a manual election in this country. And I think we are starting it this year. We want to do a proper, to get people to understand really what is the architecture of chapter 1. And this architecture runs throughout the constitution. Talk about referenda. They tell you have to present 1 million signatures. First of all, IBC doesn't have a capacity to verify even a single signature. But even if they had, any institution, give them 1 million signatures to verify, it will simply crash. They need several years. So, but if it's a digital network, then people just present their biometrics. If those who collect the signatures are given the gadgets to collect the signatures for referendum biometrically, it is something that will be done in a day. Right now, they don't verify those signatures. They just play around and say, okay, we have seen that the IDs are there. They look at the IDs instead. But the constitution requires you to verify the signature because I can impose myself using somebody's ID. So the requirement for a digital electoral system is there. And even if you go further, the question of public participation in Article 10, which basically requires us to hold referenda on issues, can be easily done if we had a digital voting system. Then a question is posed in Parliament and people will throw their ideas there. And then there's direct participation and then there is also the other way. So unless we implement that, it's going to be a cock-up in our elections.
Yeah.
The standard is tamper-proof in the Constitution. But the IBC is working towards free and fair, which was seen that free and fair is impossible in a culture like ours.
Okay, so that's an interesting point, Senator, because what I wanted to ask now, if the Constitution states tamper-proof,
Yes.
right? That means now we're looking at the element of manipulation by humans.
Yes.
Right? Because there's error, which is normal, which is natural. But then there's manipulation, which is then intentional.
Yes.
So when the Constitution in Chapter 7 talks about tamper-proof, what we're trying to say that the elimination of this human manipulation then becomes what you're after.
Yeah, what you're after.
And are we saying then that this digital process then is what is going to deliver this tamper-proof scenario that the Constitution envisages?
Yes, and for one reason. You can tamper with the elections. You can even program them to cheat. But the difference between them and the people who cheat in the dark rooms is that they will say we are cheating. When you open the server and you look, the algorithm will be there saying we are cheating, we are cheating, we are cheating. And that's how the tamper-proof is achieved. So any human interference to tamper will simply open the server and it will be exposed.
Will leave a trail.
It will leave a trail. So that's the beauty of using these digital machines. And that's why they become tamper-proof. And you see like the question of prompt declaration. When you take 7 days to declare the presidential election, is that prompt?
Well, in the larger scheme of things, yeah.
In Brazil, the other day in Brazil, they held an election of about 500 million voters. How long did they take them to announce?
How long was it?
Less than an hour after the last ballot was cast. And the election stood, and they said, anybody who has any questions, I'll do that. They ran digital elections from 88. They've been running digital elections. They've hardly reached the judiciary to adjudicate at an electoral dispute. They go administratively and look at where the concern is. They have got a system that before election, they even invite hackers. They give a prize for hackers to hack it. And this hacking thing, look at Safaricom. In M-Pesa, has it ever been hacked? Why has it never been hacked? So people will come and say, when you do elections, they're going to be hacked, they're going to be whatever. Why has M-Pesa never been hacked? Yet it carries billions of shillings on that platform.
Do we know?
It has never been hacked. It would be in the air.
Maybe there have been attempts.
Do we know?
There would be attempts, will always be there, but it has not been hacked. The Brazilian system, they even offer a prize for hackers to hack it. They never hack it.
For it to be tested.
Yeah, for it to be tested, yeah. So the technology is there, everything is there, but the political will is not there. The politicians want, and this is on both sides.
Yeah. All politicians
want a chance to tamper with the elections. And if you look at the curricular report, the verdict was that you Kenyans, your culture cannot allow you to have free and fair elections. You just need to have a system that prevents you from rigging. You need to be prevented from rigging.
Because it sounds as though there's a natural inclination to go towards that. And so what you need is something that will stop.
Will stop you.
That from happening.
Yes, that from happening. And that's why a meditation, a real reflection on chapter 7 is important for this country. That's when we shall be able to manage how power is acquired and retained.
So the mjadala then would be on that particular issue. And what you're saying is, because we know that politicians will hardly, by their own will and volition, lead us in that direction, they need to be, chaperoned and shepherded towards that direction. And one of the institutions to do that would be the judiciary. If the judges looked at it and they all said the best journey for this country is this digital, and there are provisions in this constitution that point us towards that line of digital, then let's go to the extreme and go digital. If the judges of the court, of the Supreme Court, for example, said an election in Kenya is technology, paper is not technology, that would be one way of making sure
that would be the simplest.
But then that will bring in another mjadala.
No, it won't. It won't bring in.
Sasa majaji wanasoma katiba yao.
No, but the text is there. The only thing that the judges made, when a Supreme Court says that technology does not work, technology fails. Technology never fails. And as I've demonstrated, unless it meets incompetence, ignorance, or sabotage, technology never fails, because the laws, even the planet runs on the same laws that you run on technology, and it's the laws of physics. So it doesn't fail. So the only thing, that declaration, we're going forward, will need to be revisited. And for me, when you see the judges complaining about the number of days, then they have not understood what the architecture in the place is. They need to go and maybe be given us a baseline tour of Brazil. And incidentally, Brazil, the elections are handled by the judiciary. Because the fellows were so...
It's the Electoral Commission.
Yeah, they choose the Electoral Commission, whatever they choose from the judiciary. And the one which came up with these digital elections. Because there used to be a big mess in that place. And from 1988, they cleaned up and have been running very, very good elections. And this technology then morphed up into places like India, which have developed results quite a bit. Now, the mistake IBC does, IBC goes to France. When did France hold a digital election? Canada. When did the governor of Canada hold a digital election?
Are we saying they don't know all this? The information that you're talking about, are we saying that the Judiciary Electoral Commission are not aware that Brazil has taken these giant leaps when it comes to managing the elections? Or are we saying that is what they have chosen simply to demonstrate that they have done some benchmarking?
I don't know what has happened, but you see, the problem could be a bit deeper because when you go to the law, the IBC commissioners, how they are chosen, you saw in the election before the last, one name came very prominent. Unfortunately for the late Musando, he came in very prominently. What level was Musando?
He was
a junior manager.
Yeah.
You go on the IBC, let us assume the Chebukati Commission. The amount of skills in the kind of IT that is required can fit well on the back of a postage stamp in big print. So you even need to make the law, even need to amend that law. We need to amend that law so that we require special skills in databases among the commissioners. Not just lawyers and whatever. We need people who understand IT to be among the commissioners. The law needs to provide for that.
But you politicians have made it that you're the ones who are going to appoint the commissioners.
Yes, and you're the ones who decide.
You do not want these things to happen.
Yes, let them decide, but let the requirement be that bring people who understand this and that. And I'm telling you, the moment it's required in law, they'll bring them.
It looks as though we just seem to be having a cat chasing its tail kind of issue here. Because we talk about what is needed, we talk about what the Constitution says, we talk about the need for the implementation of the Constitution along the lines which you've said. And somebody's asked an interesting question, which I'd like you to talk about as well, where it says, why should we always hide behind the Constitution? So let that burn for a while. But then here we talk about the things that need to be done. And I'm really stuck on who then is responsible for this implementation that we speak of. We have a legislative body in the name of Parliament, which is supposed to do some of these things. We have an executive body who is supposed to make sure that all of these things fall into place. But it's so everybody's looking at the other, or not even looking at it at all, and realizing that it is important for this thing to happen.
Yes. You've asked a very important question, and the salvation, the answer is in Article 1. Article 1, that's where the people can exercise their power directly, or they can delegate it. And when the power is delegated and it's not being used well, the people can recall that delegation. And that's why I was saying that, starting this year, we want to concentrate on 2 chapters in the Constitution, which we feel that if implemented, this country will be liberated. That's Chapter 7 and Chapter 12 of the Constitution. Chapter 7 on how people are elected into power, and Chapter 7 how money, our taxes are used. Like you find that with the Treasury being part of the executive, when you look at Article 225(1), the Treasury and the Minister of Finance are 2 distinct bodies. But when Parliament in 2012 was enacting, in 2013 was, in 2012 was doing the Public Finance Management Act, they retained the old system, whereby the Minister for Finance is in charge of the Treasury, and because the President appoints the Minister for Finance, therefore the President owns the Treasury, and he can go around the country declaring, we are going to put a road of 200 million here, 400 million here, 500 million here. From where? Because he's carrying the Treasury in his pocket. But if we do what the Constitution requires and separate the Treasury from the executive, so that he also has to go and beg for money to do his projects, then the budget will have a meaning. Otherwise, why do you pass a budget and the President runs all over the country declaring his own budget that is in his head with no reference to the budget that Parliament passed? You see? So that's why I'm saying that we need to concentrate on Chapter 12
and 7.
Chapter 7. And that will sort out this country completely once we implement those 2 chapters. This business of saying that we need to create laws to create a leader of opposition, do whatever, is arrant nonsense.
Senator, I want to take you back a little bit. This matter of there needing to be some knowledge infused into the judiciary, and you said there are enough experts who can actually do that within the country.
Yes.
Do you think the judiciary is aware that they lack this knowledge?
I don't know if they are aware that they lack this knowledge, but from their own pronouncements, they lack it. When they say that they expand the time for us to look at the case, it means I've not understood the architecture that is used in chapter 7. So there's that clear, when they declare that technology does not work, or that the technology fails, honestly, to any scientist, tell him that technology fails, then why would you be in a plane flying at thousands of meters away?
Because it fails. That's why flights are grounded by the...
No, they get grounded when there's negligence, when there's ignorance, or there's sabotage.
Which causes what?
But you can
Failure.
deal with those are human elements dealing with technology. You can deal with those elements of negligence, incompetence, and sabotage. You can address those. But don't pronounce that technology fails. Technology never fails. It is human beings who fail to apply technology. And so we need proper training and proper discipline. And people with technology just go. That's why people are able to go up to they went up to the moon and came back.
The arm of government you belong to, how does it relate to the arm of government that we refer to as the judiciary? I ask this because there's a gentleman who heads the Judiciary Academy. That is where judges go to brush up their knowledge and probably infuse. Now, I asked about the relationship because if you have this awareness and you know and you can understand it, should this academy not be the sort of place where such knowledge is then passed on?
I fully agree that that's the way it should be. But you see, in Parliament, a lot of things are largely transactional, and 90% of the work we do is useless.
Sorry?
90% of the work we do in Parliament is useless.
Meaning?
We spend a lot of time doing statements. We spend a lot of time doing motions. You even see that, just because you talk of motions, what went on along in the Bomas was a motion, okay? The whole process began as a motion in the National Assembly. It came to Parliament, we made it a motion. But when you go to Article 109 of the Constitution, it tells you that the legislative authority of Parliament is exercised through bills introduced in the Parliament, passed by Parliament, and signed by the President.
Yes.
So what was going on in Bomas, he had no legislative authority. And if I wanted to scramble it, I would just go to court and say, where was the bill that allowed the Bomas, the negotiations to begin, for you to begin spending public funds? You see, there's a lot of...
So these things...
So let me just finish. So, when you say that, so when you come back, we have that legislation, which we need to do. But even the legislation, power right now in the Parliament I've joined, I don't know the previous, but the ones I've joined, the power in Parliament is outside Parliament.
Meaning?
The members of the ruling party or those who are affiliated with it behave like they are the executive. The others behave like they're the opposition outside Parliament. So they look to their principles for guidance. There is no autonomy in the House to say that this is the House, this is how we are going to deal with things. We have got an opposition within this House. We have got the lead of majority and we have got the lead of minority. How do we engage as an institution to make sure we check the executive? So all of us, both sides are looking outside Parliament for guidance. So basically there's no Parliament.
We have ideals, but we are nowhere close to those ideals.
Yes, but you have to work towards them.
We have to. But then we have to have that honest conversation then. How do we have that honest conversation when there's so many other interests that are pulling us away from the ideal?
I think the thing is to bite small and chew finely so that you don't get constipation. That's why we are going just to bite 2 chapters out of the many chapters in the Constitution and chew them finely. Another thing I might just want to interest you with, you have had something called the gender rule. Do you know in the entire Constitution there is no word gender rule? It was another creation of the Supreme Court.
What is there?
The gender principle.
That's
And
what you have.
Yeah, it's gender principle, and the principle is aspirational. A rule is mandatory. You have to obey. So when the Supreme Court twisted from the gender principle to the gender rule, they again created another problem for us. So we begin saying implement the gender rule, and the rule has to be obeyed. But in the Constitution, there's no gender rule. Look at Article 27, Clause 8. It's a gender principle. Article 81 is a gender principle. Where does the word gender rule come from? And it has captured everybody's
So
fighting.
principle means aspirational.
It's aspiration. It's a principle.
Without any timeline.
No timelines on
But
that
the Constitution puts timelines.
Where?
Constitution says, for example, that if Parliament is not constituted this way, that someone can go to court immediately.
When you interpret it as a gender rule, then you get that problem. But a gender principle, you don't get there. And now, when you come to judicial craft on that particular issue, there was judicial craft, which gave us the phraseology gender rule. But you realize these things were there during the review momentum, when they are doing judicial review. The people, for whatever reason, allowed it for the for the county assemblies to have that balance in the assemblies, but for the national institution, they removed it. You see, just the same way with the and me, I'm a textualist. Just the same way with the question of homosexuality. It was there when it was proposed during the review. The people removed it. So how would a judge today sit down and address homosexuality? He should tell us that that's a political issue, take it to Parliament. If you want it, since the people rejected in the process of review, take it to Parliament and let now Parliament deal with it. It cannot be introduced through the judiciary. The same thing with the gender issues. It was clearly removed from the proposal, and they said the National Assembly will be like this, and the accommodation was we shall have nominations. Like in the Senate, we have about 20 nominations. We have 16 of which are women.
Yeah.
To address the question of gender.
Yeah.
So you cannot then come up and say that Parliament as it is today is not properly constituted. But when you go and they introduce the word gender rule out there in Article 27, Clause 8, and in Article 81, then it begins becoming a problem. There's a rule here. How are you obeying it?
But is that not the problem that we get when a matter goes to court and that is the interpretation? It's a good example we are giving. It went to court, they interpreted it that way. So are we challenging the interpretation?
It went to court through an advisory by Gidumuigai. An advisory by Gidumuigai, who went to the Supreme Court to seek an advisory, and they asked the question, will the gender rule, he began the word the gender rule.
He began with us with introducing the word
gender rule. Will the gender rule be applied at the 2013 elections or later? You see?
Yep.
And now that's how now the debate begins. But the normal way that the judiciary functions, you begin in the High Court, which is adversarial. And you see in this advisory, and this in fact, I tried to join that particular motion when they made advisory. I was thrown out because I was not an institution. But interestingly, that time I was using a lawyer. My lawyer Kanjama, because of what we had, the pleadings we had made, the court felt they were so important that they retained my lawyer. Now, how do you retain my lawyer after throwing me out?
Because he can bring value to the court.
He could bring value to the court, but I could not fight because that the same day, that evening, that's the day I was attacked and left for dead in the streets of Nairobi that evening. But you find that now they take my lawyer, then they drop me, and yet it was me who was instructing my lawyer what to go and say. You see, it was not my lawyer who was instructing me. You see, so in that time, when they were doing that advisory, I looked at it and I went to bring those protestations, but I was locked out. So if this matter had begun in the High Court, and then of course again the Supreme Court somehow in a cut and paste, they went and cut something from Wikipedia, put in that the advisory number 1, and made it mandatory that from Nauru, something called Nauru, some principality, now they made it mandatory that that advisory opinion binds all the courts, you see. So in that particular case, there's a problem. But if they had allowed that the advisories for whomever they're advising, but they allow the citizens to litigate this matter from the High Court, then all these things that I'm talking about will be ventilated so that by the time it gets to the Supreme Court, it is so distilled, you cannot have those errors being made.
The citizens whom Chapter 1 gives the authority to do precisely what you've just said.
Yes, and those are among the things we need to look at.
As we conclude, Senator.
Yes.
What is it that you're asking Kenyans to do today and this year, 2024? So you're saying focus on Chapter 7, Chapter 12.
Yes, that's my prayer.
And do what with those chapters?
Make sure that we are able to control how power is acquired in this country, and we also control how our public finances are used by those who are in power. That's the ultimate challenge.
How do we ensure that that happens?
Once the people understand what's in those chapters, they will demand them. So that's why I think the route for this is direct to the people, go back to the people, get the people to understand this, and then we move forward and make demands on those, so that we can influence the legislation and all those things. And then we get to a point whereby the treasury is independent of the politicians, the public funds are managed by technocrats, and the politicians can't misuse it. Number 2, elections are digital, human beings cannot interfere. Where there's any dispute, we open the servers and everybody comes and looks at it. We don't even go to the judiciary. We finish our things administratively.
Open the server, check the issue.
Move on.
Yeah. Do you think we can do this by 2027?
Yes, we are, and we're going to do it.
By 2027?
Yes, we are going to do it.
Thank you. Senator Okiya Omtatah is a senator for Busia County. He's been our guest this morning as we begin the new year. He's begun on that high note. He says, Kenyans, guys, we should be having digital elections. And Kenyans, that guy who's the Minister for Finance should not be the head of the National Treasury. Those two should be different. Think about